morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for being here today. My name is Nikki Antonio. I'm the state representative for House District 13, and I'd like to welcome you this morning to this press conference. Okay. We are pleased to host this press conference to welcome our coalition partners. We'll hear more about them later, from Ohioans to Stop Execution, and also the members of Witness to Innocence. Last year, after more than 2 years of investigation, the Supreme Court Joint Task Force on Administration of Ohio's Death Penalty, a joint task force of judges, prosecutors, criminal defense attorneys, legal scholars, and legislators assembled by the Ohio Supreme Court Justice Maureen O'Connor delivered a report with 56 recommendations for reforming capital punishment in Ohio. These recommendations were welcome news for those who support or oppose the death penalty, because at the very core, Ohioans should not tolerate a system that executes people with mental illness, risks executing the innocent, and perpetuates unfair discrimination in our justice system. As many of you may know, I, along with State Representative Dan Ramos, have introduced legislation to end Ohio's use of the death penalty and move to life without parole. And we're not alone. When asked, a majority of Ohioans prefer life without the possibility of parole instead of use of the death penalty. Life in prison without the possibility of parole costs less, holds murderers and accountable by punishing them severely while keeping us safe. And if it turns out that we have made a mistake, it's reversible. As we will hear today, mistakes have been made to some men waiting on death row. There is substantial evidence that the death penalty in Ohio is not fair, and more often than anyone wants to admit, it's not accurate. Supreme Court Justice Paul Pfeiffer has called it a death lottery. He and former Attorney General Jim Petro, two of the authors of Ohio's current death penalty law, now recognize capital punishment as a public policy failure and call for its repeal. And yet, we recognize that many in this legislature still think that executions are necessary. But have they taken a closer look at how the system is failing us? That is the question. Given this, the challenge to those who want to keep the death penalty is this: fix it or end it. I, of course, would strongly support the latter, to end it. We can pass a bill to repeal the death penalty this session, which would save a lot of money, at the very least. It would be the most compassionate, pragmatic, and economically feasible thing to do. However, it would also allow for the families of murder victims to actually have closure. However, at the very least, what we could do is pass a selected number of the recommendations from the task force to reform the system in short term and prevent wrongful convictions. I believe that as members of a civil society, we should not sanction executions at all in Ohio. But today, I challenge my colleagues to fix it by passing some of these reforms, or as I said, end it by legislating life without parole. I'd like to introduce our guests, but first, the Executive Director of Ohioans to Stop Executions, Kevin Warner, who will introduce the new OTC annual report, and then we'll meet some of Ohio's death row survivors. Kevin?
Thank you, Representative Antonio. And thank you to all the legislators who have stopped by. Also want to thank the members of the meeting for coming. And I want to acknowledge board members and coalition partners who are here. Thank you all for being here. I I certainly don't need to add anything to what Representative Antonio said. It is true. Millions of Ohioans are Ohioans to stop executions. And the most recent polling does demonstrate that more Ohioans, when given a choice, prefer life in prison instead of the death penalty. Today, Ohioans to Stop Executions is delivering several documents to all legislators. These documents are available to anyone on our webpage, otse.org. First, our new annual report, larger picture of it right there, A Crumbling Institution, Why Ohio Must Fix or End the Death Penalty. This report spells everything out. The name says it all. It should be seen as a companion to our 2013 annual report, which is the death lottery, how race and geography determine who goes to Ohio's death row. Again, the name says it all. Today we're delivering the new report to every legislator and every legislative office. The new report breaks down why we feel the death penalty is a crumbling institution and adds some context to the recommendations made by the Ohio Supreme Court Death Penalty Task Force. In particular, we have highlighted the 13 recommendations that will prevent wrongful convictions from happening in Ohio. These are important, clearly, given the men who I'm standing with today. Nobody wants to convict or execute an innocent person, or the wrong person, rather. Not only is that an injustice to that innocent person, but it leaves real killers out on the street, potentially to commit crimes again. So these 13 recommendations, directly or indirectly, will prevent wrongful convictions and wrongful executions, and they should be passed into law this year. For the past year, Ohioans to Stop Executions has been presenting our voices of experience in public forums all across the state of Ohio. We've met thousands of people, many who oppose the death penalty, many who support the death penalty. But we all agree that it is time for a change. Even those who support the death penalty acknowledge the problems and want to see reforms passed. The Voices of Experience events have included death row survivors, murder victims' family members, Ohio Task Force members, former government officials who supported the death penalty and whose job was actually to carry it out. Those would include Terry Collins and Reggie Wilkinson. We have videos on our website, and we welcome you to go and to see those. Again, that's otse.org. And I just want to add one final note. We started that campaign and we started that educational process in Senator Faber's district, and then we also had another event in Speaker Rosenberger's district. And again, what we were met with was grave concern about the way Ohio's death penalty is moving, and no-brainer, we should enact these legislation, we should enact these reforms today. Thank you very much, and Representative Antonio.
Thank you, Kevin. We have with us today 6 of Ohio's 9 death row survivors, exonerees. Each of these men were ultimately found innocent, and yet they were wrongly convicted in Ohio courtrooms, and they spent time on Ohio's death row. These men are all members of a national organization called Witness to Innocence. They are among 152 people nationwide who have been exonerated and freed after having been wrongly sent to death row to await execution.
Well, my name is Dale Johnston, and my victims was my daughter, Nancy Johnston, and her boyfriend, Paul Schultz. And the key factor in my wrongful conviction, wrongful conviction is really a misnomer. I wasn't wrongly convicted. I was deliberately framed. Prosecutor, fortunately, made a lot of mistakes, was unable to me to be by the 4th District Court, conviction reversed and upheld by the Ohio Supreme Court. I was actually free in 1990. I actually spent just a little over 5.5 years on death row. But totally, from all the different county jails that put me through, I was behind bars for 7 years. And if the state had this in, I'd be dead now. I wouldn't be here today. So there's a lot of things that has to deal with each and every one of us. A variety of reasons that we ended up here. And I don't think any of them had anything to do with what we did or didn't do. It's, like I say, it was a misnomer because I was deliberately framed. And the main reason for that, many witnesses came forward and told them they had to look at Ken Lynn Scott. Well, they had a problem with that. Lynn Scott was a local drug dealer, and he was a snitch for the sheriff. Many of the powers that be in the city of Logan altered drugs. So they had to protect him. In order to protect him, they had to find somebody else. And I was the lucky candidate. They spent just about 2 years demeaning me in the press and every magazine. And they said such a job that I've often said, if I was that kind of person, I'd probably consider it myself. But it's the problem is there is many problems with the death penalty. And I don't think anybody can fix all the problems that will be sufficient to keep people like the ones you see here from ending up on death row. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Derek Jameson. I'm the 119th Death Row Exoneree in the United States. I was born and raised in Cincinnati, Ohio. And I was sentenced to die October 25th of 1985 in Hamilton County, Cincinnati, Ohio. And when I was convicted, they charged me with the murder of a young man by the name of Gary Mitchell. On August 1st of 1984, this young man was brutally attacked, and he passed away like 7 to 8 days later. And I was charged with this crime, and I was sentenced to die October the 25th of 1985. And on October the 25th of 2005, I was free from death row. I did 2 decades on Ohio Death Row, and man, in Ohio, we executed 53 of my friends. I knew these young men, and it was a horrible loss to me. I remember the first execution in the state of Ohio of Mr. Wilford Berry. And it was in 1999, Ohio carried out their first execution. And I remember that day like it was yesterday when they killed the first person in the state of Ohio, Mr. Wilford Berry. And after that, it was like a dark cloud came over the state of Ohio. And as we stand right now in 2015, we've got 53 people 53 human beings that have been executed in the state of Ohio. I'm the 119th Death Row Exonerees in the United States, and I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio. Thank you very much.
First, thank you for having us here and for listening to us. You must hear what we are saying. My name is Jody Ambrosio, and I spent 22 years on Ohio's Death Row. And what we are here for is to try and put an end to the death penalty. But if we can't put an end to it, we have to at least try to fix it. But I'm here to say it's beyond fixing. But something is better than nothing. I was accused in 1988 and sentenced to die for the murder of Anthony Clank, a 19-year-old boy who will never get any justice because they will never go after the real murderers, because by doing so shows they should have never came after me. So therefore that poor young boy will never get any justice for what happened to him. I was convicted in Cleveland, Ohio, and spent, like I said, 22 years on Ohio's death row. For that is 80% of my adult life. I was never in trouble before with the law. I was an honorably discharged war veteran, and yet they took the word of a man that knew all the facts and how this poor kid was killed. And because he ran to the police and pointed his finger at me, they took his word over mine. And that's all it takes. I'm the most common joke that there can be. And if it can happen to me, it can happen to you, or your children, or your grandchildren. The system is broken. But we have to try to do anything, because right now, it doesn't look like the state would abolish the death penalty. But at least if they enact these recommendations, it will help. Because a lot of the things that would be enacted would have stopped me from being convicted to begin with. So please take to heart what you hear from these gentlemen, and just think of how many years of our lives were lost because of the system. Thank you.
I'd like to thank you guys for having us, and very grateful to be here today. My name is Kwame Jones. Formerly, I was Ronnie Bridgman. I was tried, convicted, and sentenced to death in Cleveland, Ohio, in 1975. I was sentenced to death row along with my brother and my best friend, Ricky Jackson. I did 28 years in prison. Was released on I went in prison in 1975, and I was released in the year 2003. I did 3 years approximately on death row, and it was it is the worst time ever in my life. Based on the fact that we were innocent young men, and I do mean young men, my brother being the young man, he was 20, Ricky and I were just 17, going to turn 18 as we were committed to our death row cells. I think that the atrocities that happened to us, and that has happened to those men before us, and that has continued to happen even now as we speak, are grave. I think that the potential to stop this death sentencing in Ohio and the world over is very much active right now at this time. I believe that this is the best time to have this initiative, and I support it 100%. Had I not been fortunate in 1978 when the Ohio Supreme Court overturned the death penalty, there would be conversation to this end with myself, my brother, and/or my extended family as well, Ricky Jackson. So having said that, I want to reiterate the fact that we are here specifically to say that to these legislative people, please help us end this death sentencing in the United States, especially in Cleveland, especially in Ohio, and especially now. Thank you so much.
Wiley.
My name is Wiley Everett Brisbane, and I was convicted in Coward County, Cleveland, Ohio. The victim of my case was one Henry J. France. He was the one that was salesman. He was the murder victim. And eventually there was Anna Robinson, who was the victim suffering a neck wound at that time. My release from prison came on November 21st, 2014, in the Coward County, under the judge gave me the title, where I gained exoneration from any and all charges relevant to this case. While under this purposeful conviction, I served from December 18, 1975 to November 26, 1979 on death row in the Southern Ohio Western Facility in Ridgeville, Ohio. That was 4 years. I feel that the well-known gunman named by an FBI informant whose car registration belonged to that person in the getaway car used in the case, had it been really pursued, we would not have suffered a wrongful conviction today. I feel that had the state sought to comprehend the well-known people, and of course, if the state of Ohio had its way, we would possibly all not be in the Thank you.
Thank you for having us here today. My name is Ricky Jackson. Unfortunately, I have the dubious distinction of being Ohio, or United States, I should say, longest serving innocent person. I served a total of 39 years in prison. You already heard about my case. Me and these gentlemen are on the same case. I mean, and I really don't want to go into particulars because that's not why I'm here. I'm here because when people share in a tragedy, the first thing they want to do as survivors is talk about their ordeal and what they went through, because they want to pass that on to people so that it won't happen to them. And that's why I'm here. 39 years in prison, most of my life. Most of this man's life, And I don't want to see it happen again to anybody, guilty or innocent. Excuse me, I'm sorry. I try not to get emotional with this thing, but I can't. I spent 3.5 years on death row, and I can tell you from experience, this is nothing I've read. This isn't anything somebody's told me. I was there, I know. It's not a place fit for human beings. If we do this to canines, the world would be in an uproar. We do it to people every day. And we standing here today, we're survivors, but I know in my heart there are a lot of people who don't survive, who don't get as fortunate. And so I think that it's tantamount that we take this step forward
with these presented legislation to not so much as change people's views about the death penalty, but to get us a conversation and a dialogue started about the death penalty. And hopefully through dialogue and fairness and transparency, we can stop this horrendous crime that the people are perpetrating in our names. That a lot of the public is really not aware about what's really going on. I'm here to tell you, I know, I've been there, these gentlemen have been there. And again, I reiterate, we wouldn't do this to dogs, we wouldn't do this to animals. And so please take this legislation and what we said to you today in consideration. Like I said, I'm not here to change anybody's mind per se, but to start a dialogue about what's really going on and what's being perpetrated in our name as citizens. Thank you.
So as we said when we started, we have an opportunity, there's a call until we end it, to fix it. And with that, we will open it up to any questions from the press. I also want to acknowledge one of our legislators has stopped by. Mike Estenziano is here. Thanks for being here today, Representative. And we have some folks from Ohio Right to Life and I think the Catholic Conference as well, and many of the members of the coalition that are here. So with that, if there are any questions from the press for our speakers today?
Great.
Okay, with that, wait, you spoke too soon.
Is this the first time you six gentlemen have been in the same room together?
No. I'll stick to the first time I'll stick to the in the same room together, but all five of us and that girl.
What is it like to be in the same room with people? I mean, I can only imagine that this experience is a very personal, almost lonely experience. What's it like to be with other people who have kind of gone through what you've gone through?
We get it, and we're trying to make everybody else get it. You know, we get it. You know, we experience basically the same thing. You know, and we want everybody else to get it. You know, because it's executing people in America is like, it's like something you would see on cable TV now. You know, nobody's really interested or cares if dirty, rotten criminal killing, who cares, but it's not like that. I've been back there, I know. I mean, these are human beings. People have done some terrible things, I understand that. But actually having to live with these people, I'm sorry, go ahead.
This is, the best part about it, I guess, is the fact that we all came from the same place. And so, you know, looking at Joe, and I look over here at Dale, and I look at Derek, my brothers, I realized that, you know, either one of these guys could have been killed at any time, and that they could have been killed for no reason. And that's exactly how I say that. They could have been killed. They could have been murdered. Because these were innocent men, just like the people that they had been perpetually wrongfully incarcerated for. And so when I see these guys, you know, on this side of the fence with me, I'm elated. You know, I still am dancing for these two guys getting out. You know, you saw tears on my eyes as we were speaking, because this is, to me, this is the epitome of having arrived until the light of truth. We have before us now a chance, as I've said, to go forward in a more positive way than ever before, because now we have come together as a unity. And believe me, nothing is stronger than numbers. Numbers is what makes strength. We learned that in everything, in all existences of life. Numbers is where your strength comes. And so if we come together, as we have in the past, where the three of us came together, him by himself with his family, him with his family, to have a support system, one for, and we used to say when I was coming up, each one teach one. Well, that applies in this initiative as well, because I'm learning from you guys are learning from us today, things that you've never known. And so we are going forward, hopefully, to reconcile with the state of Ohio, the United States of America, the world, and thus eradicate the death penalty. I'm for getting rid of it. I don't want to see it fixed. I don't think that it can be fixed. I think that it should be totally eradicated. And thus,
I'm just wondering, I know some of you, maybe Mr. Johnson hasn't gotten there yet, but some of you will get money for compensation. Is there any amount of money that could compensate for the time you lost?
no.
So I kind of figured that would be the answer. But and to follow up on that, I have written about a couple guys who've been out before, and they always said there was a gap in their lives, and even though they were out and free, that never kind of filled in. Anybody talk to that?
It's true, it's like,
Would you mind?
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine.
And they want to.
I mean, that's so accurate that he would say that because in the prison environment is so structured. I mean, you know, basically, you can walk through the day blindfolded. You know what's going to happen. And you never realize just how much you missed out on until you actually back out in the world. And for me, it was just having difficulty fitting in, trying to find my niche, what people to associate with, because you don't have that shared experience if you're sitting at dinner and people are talking about what they did on vacation or what happened with this married couple. You don't just sit there and you're just listening because you don't have anything to contribute. And so that's so accurate that he would say that about that gap, because it's just, you can't feel it, you know, you can't feel it.
So is Tim Howard, I don't know if any of you knew Tim Howard.
I knew Tim.
Very well.
Yes.
Unfortunately, he passed away after he got out, but
I saw him that week of his death. There is also in that gap, time seems to stop. Once a person becomes incarcerated, and the longer you become incarcerated, it's more solidified, this stoppage of time. And I say that because when I re-entered society and I had left, one of my nieces was like 5. And so now I see her, she's 45. And, but she was still, I expected to see a little girl until the actual moment I saw her. Because time in your mind and in your heart stops. The people that you love and remember are always so fresh in your mind and your heart. But the reality is, and I used to teach universal law. And in doing that, I would always talk about those things that are apparent and those things that are real. And these are the things that become real once you become reunited with your family, your loved ones, and society itself. And you realize that all those things that had stopped, that stagnation in time, that gap, was those things that were apparent, you know, didn't even exist. It was just in your mind and your heart, you know. And so, yeah, that's true. There's a tremendous gap. And there's really no way to fill it. You just got to keep on keeping on. Thank you.
thank you.
Wow.